If you own a pair of Crocs, even though you know they're super ugly, you might be a nurse. If you've ever felt like Neo in the Matrix, like dodging shit that somebody is like throwing at you, maybe that's just psych, but. If you've ever had your ass kicked by an elderly woman. You know, the closest I've gotten assaulted by patients multiple times, you know, the closest I've ever gotten to having my lights knocked out was a 10-year-old boy and like a 90-year-old woman. If you have unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as humor regarding significant occupational trauma, you might be a nurse. If you've ever had to accept that a physician is not going to say these words, "You were right," or something like that. This is research, I'm a nurse. I don't think she's ever given herself enough credit for the impact that she makes on other people.
You like her?
Yeah, she's tolerable.
We're really grateful for Whitney and her education and what she brings to the Native community.
I always say it's the essence of Whitney. You have to just understand how really good she is and how she gets it.
She is going to have vulnerable conversations with people in a way that makes them feel like they're cared for.
She's got a real potty mouth.
I do have a real
She has a mouth like a sailor.
It's probably
but
worse than that.
It inspires me to talk like a sailor as well. We can get it all out of our system. I'm Whitney Fear. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner at Family Healthcare. Family Healthcare is a federally qualified community health center. We do quite a different approach at Family Healthcare than a lot of providers are doing. People's emotional health stuff is taken care of, their physical health gets better too. We're unique in the way that we're working on both. I'm Lakota and grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation. I see patients across the lifespan, kids through geriatrics, for treatment of mental health conditions and substance use disorders. It's a job I wasn't expecting to do. And I think it probably does have a lot to do with people not giving up on me. The reservation is super rural. I was pretty miserable. I drank too much and I was a jerk, and I had dug myself such a deep hole that I'm supposed to be starting my junior year of high school, but I have a 0.5 GPA. I didn't have a chance in hell of graduating on time, but I had a great guidance counselor, and he's like, I've seen how you perform on standardized testing, and it's at a level that's significantly higher than what you're doing in school. He literally asked me why, if I was so smart, I acted so damn stupid. It was because I saw my parents work so hard their whole lives and not really ever getting to a point where they didn't have to work so hard. I saw a lot of death on the reservation. People die really young. I wondered why there was no representation from the Indigenous community.
This is the best exhibition we've had in a long time. We were working on the master plan for how to expand the museum, and we had brought in Native American community members into that meeting. And we had posed the question, what does the community need and what can we do? And you had said something specifically about a space for mental health and a space for community members to go to be safe. And to the museum's credit, they were on board with it, and we did what we could to make this happen as fast as possible. So that was really back to something that you had advocated for at that time.
I love it. I think it's great. It's a huge opportunity for sure. It's nice to just appreciate simple things. A big concept in Lakota culture is to be respectful of everything, all living things. All these things are living, which is something we know is important for like approaching patients. Actually, like asking people how they want their care and what they think is possible, because that is communicative of respect rather than compliance. In my culture, Indigenous people in general, it's disrespectful to make prolonged eye contact with people. That's another thing that can get misconstrued in like psychiatric interviews. I've seen a lot of like documentation like poor eye contact. It's not poor, it's like culturally appropriate. I think one of the best things that nurses could do for that would be to like go back to the basics. I'm so surprised at how many nurses have never even read Florence Nightingale's book, Notes on Nursing. It's really just super basic stuff. There's like a whole chapter on preserving people's dignity, not expecting people to be nice to you whenever they feel like crap. She talked a lot about knowing the population that you're working with and what their specific needs are, because they can vary from area to area. So this guy I met, he's walking to work super early in the morning, and he said that he saw what in American culture like called Bigfoot, Yeti, whatever, Lakota spiritual beliefs. So this guy is Lakota. I believe it's like a kindred ancestral spirit that has the ability to move between planes of existence, and if they reveal themselves to you, it's a blessing. It means that they feel you're a safe person with a compassionate and generous heart. He felt like honored. He said he told a psychiatrist about this when he like put him on Risperdal, which is like a pretty heavy antipsychotic. It's especially disturbing to hear as like an IHS provider, as if you're like, that's your whole job is working with Native people every day, then you gotta like try to learn about people and their beliefs. One time I was talking to somebody about their diabetes, and they were not overweight at all. They were not eating very frequently. So it didn't make a lot of sense why their numbers were just going up. Come to find out, the guy didn't have any skillets or pots and pans. Everything he was eating was coming from the microwave, which is a lot of carbs and starch. So I got the guy like referral to an agency that bought him cookware, and then his diabetes numbers were like amazing a couple months later. I could see how easily in that same position, a lot of other providers would have chose to like really chastise that guy about that. Like, don't you know this is a serious disease? Like you're gonna, people have limb amputations. And that just makes people feel like garbage about themselves. It's not helpful. When it comes to working with people in poverty, we have this like, you'll get what you get kind of attitude, and I don't think that's okay. The problem there is feeling justified in determining whether somebody is like deserving of health care or not, which is a dangerous road to go down. Yeah, I did wear scrubs for a while at first.
When she first started working here, she wore nurse scrubs all the time. And all of a sudden, there's that one day I come walking, look at the window, and there's like, oh Christ, a new fucking homeless bitch on the street. Sure, I look, oh my God, that's Whitney.
You never told me that.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
no, I thought you were talking about the time you asked me. Damon was one of the first patients I started working with when I started working in homeless health.
December 27th, 2004 was the first day I came up to Fargo.
Where were you before?
St. Cloud. This is weird. Okay, maybe I might be a little too high.
Legally, though.
Hey, yeah. Legitimate and fucking legal. I can actually see where it helps my anxiety, depression. Actually helps me fight my alcoholism.
I said it's whatever you feel like is good and fine or whatever. Up here is a liquor store that pretty much everybody used to go to called Steve's Package. It's not open anymore, but.
This is one of the bad spots. They still got the cameras up.
I do know. Looks like somebody tried to punch their way in the building.
Oh my God. I'm one of those weirdos that actually liked being homeless because I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have no responsibilities. I didn't have to care about nothing. It was an adventure.
Adventurous time that might be to a 15-year-old, there's a lot of scary aspects to that. Places them at a higher risk for things like new, unique experiences, meaning abused by more than one person. It reinforces brain development that is not what we would see in a typical child, rational thinking, fight or flight stuff, being hypervigilant, less ability to conduct futuristic thinking. So as an adult, they just can't deal, and then they lose their job, and then they lose their housing. People who have developed such complex responses that it looks to a lot of clinicians more like something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and then that can result in people being treated with the wrong medications. Adverse childhood experiences definitely matter in all aspects of care. It was a landmark study where the conclusion was that there was a dose-mediated response between adverse childhood experiences and the development of chronic health problems. And we know that the higher your number goes, as far as ACEs goes, the more likely you are to not only have the disease, but have complications and probably die younger. That study was done well over 20 years ago now, and we've done essentially nothing with it. It definitely wasn't something I learned about in nursing school. It's nice right here. The river's muddy as shit, though.
Yeah, but this is so weird. It's where's the bottle at? Give me a shot.
How long were you homeless?
God, since I was 15 to 47. From about 15 to 47. I've barely been housed now 5 years. My life is kind of messed up, has been messed up. Well, but last 5 years I've been trying to get it back together, and it's been working pretty good, you think?
Yeah.
From when you first met me?
Yeah, I think some things have went pretty good.
What were you like when she first met you?
Oh, fuck, I was drinking all the time. I didn't have a care, it was more or less like make enough for breakfast the next morning and be drinking all the time, but.
Damon can be a hard person to get to know. That's not totally unusual with the homeless population. A lot of people have had pretty awful experiences with like a variety of professionals, and they don't honestly like have very many reasons to trust people. So this guy got a cut on his hand and it looked like shit. And I told him to go to the ER because he didn't have a doctor that day. He went down there and the nurse like right away was like, we're not giving you any pain pills, so might as well not come in here or whatever.
Lady, I already fucking drank a bottle, so what pain that's gonna do for me anyways?
You tell her I'm not even really in any pain or something like that. He said,
yeah,
I already took my meds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. I already took my meds, man. Fuck, I drank a bottle.
That irritated him so much, he just left, and then we got him talked into going back down there. I called to make sure that things didn't go that way again.
Then I had a red line going down here, and that doctor said, you could have died or had it amputated. And I was like, oh, shit.
It makes people think, like, why would like, even bother then? If, like, people aren't gonna listen, they're just gonna make an assumption about something. I work from a trauma-informed care approach, and when you work from that, you don't see people being really tense or irritable as like a personal attack. There's a woman named Heather Simonich who's done a lot of education on this in North Dakota, and how she explains is like universal precautions for people's emotions. So like when we go to clean up blood, we just assume that the person could have a communicable disease that we could get if we touch it with bare hands, so we don't. People like Damon who have experienced things like neglect, child abuse, domestic violence, and things are such that with trauma-informed care, you could assume that's more likely an explanation for their behavior than just like they want to be like a jerk to everybody or whatever.
I don't care if you're Charles Manson sitting in front of me and you did all these terrible things, like you are now my patient for this whatever amount of time that we have. Like you have to do that. And that is like, I feel like very strongly that that is your obligation as a nurse. Such a learning experience for me was being a nurse going through infertility while working in a NICU setting where there are babies who are withdrawing from drugs because their mom used drugs. That's hard. I think it would be really easy for that to really put some real significant bias and prejudice into your heart. You have to reframe your mindset of like, the mom has a disease. There is no woman in the world who would intentionally inflict harm upon their infant. And there was a lot of grief within those moms as well. You're gonna recognize it, and then you're gonna try to overcome.
Hi, Viva. How are you today? Pretty good.
There was suspicious behavior going on around our clinic, particularly by Homeless Health. And there's some indicators there that there's a problem. What kind of friend comes and is like, this woman needs to have a pap smear, she needs to be tested for hepatitis, and like, this is the first day of her last period. That's how I became acquainted with Melissa.
I've done a lot of other social work type of positions, and this is easily the most heart-wrenching when you think about the work of someone being exploited every day. Personally, I think it's worse than murder. When you can torture and exploit someone through sex or labor over and over and over again, watching them be depleted of anything, I just think that there's nothing worse. Hey, Melissa, I wanted to throw a few situations from last week on your radar. On Thursday afternoon, the healthcare facility called me concerned about a female that she was being trafficked. Her quote-unquote uncle was there with her and was talking over her and being difficult.
Which was kind of the first red flag. He was pretty aggressive and talked over her, answered questions for her. So the provider was like, step out to the lobby.
Yeah, okay, but that's great that they had him step out of the room.
Yeah, and he ended up taking off. He did not wait in the lobby.
When we look at a victim of human trafficking, it's not what you see in social media, it's not what you see in the movies. Every victim has their own story and their own dynamic to their exploitation. Some victims we see are labor trafficked. Other victims are adults that are victimized through sex. Someone offers them a survival need, and then they have to exchange sex with someone in order to get those needs to survive. Sometimes it's youth who are trafficked by their families, and then some are groomed or trafficked just by a love interest. It's someone that just falls in love with the wrong person sometimes.
Trafficking victims could feel judged by healthcare providers. I've definitely heard things like, oh my God, how could you seriously get chlamydia like a 5th time or whatever? Traffickers love that. So if you want to support them, keep doing that because they love for victims, for the people that they're trying to exploit, they're in the midst of exploiting, to get treated like shit by other people so that they can say, see, I'm the only one who takes care of you.
We see it happen time and time again where victims finally are brave enough to come get help from a service provider and are treated so poorly that any chance of us intervening at that time is completely shattered. They are taught to be hypervigilant all the time. They need to know all the time how to read people, what's going on around them. Within seconds, they know if they want to work with you. And so if they're going to talk or disclose, medical providers have a huge opportunity to help these victims. Does she have a follow-up appointment where we could ask her if she wanted more services, or do you know if you'll see her again just at your facility or anything?
She does not. Unfortunately, they weren't even able to get to like any medical point of her appointment. But I do know what she looks like. Family Healthcare knows. They were going to put some flags in her chart as kind of some alerts. So I'm hopeful that if she shows back up, they will reach out and we can try to get her connected.
Well, thank you for being there. If you hear any updates, let me know and I will do the same.
Sounds like a plan, girl.
Okay, thanks, Jillian. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's a pretty normal day, normal call. The work affects your life in a variety of ways that kind of sneak up on you. I was playing in a softball tournament and a lot of drinking and partying happens, right? And so we crack our first beer as a team and I'm just looking around and my first thought was, I wonder how many girls are gonna get raped here tonight. And that's my normal thought process. A lot of medical personnel suffer from that. And when we think about that after work all the time, we lose our ability to even experience emotions ourselves. And when we lose those things in our own life, how do we help people who need it most? Self-care is not bubble baths and wine. You have to have some really honest conversations with yourself and say, how am I separating myself from work? Because if I don't, I'm gonna burn out and my clients are gonna suffer.
There's no adequate way to really mentally prepare yourself for the level of responsibility if you're taking it as seriously as you should be.
When people don't have these great experiences with healthcare providers, I often think that they're probably getting their healthcare from a burnt out provider.
100%, yes. I think it's okay to be scared. I think it's okay
to advocate for yourself if you don't feel like there's enough support. Because you see the worst, I mean the worst things that like a human being could tell another human being, and then just come home and like have to be normal.
Things that you might drag home and even subtle things can build up over time. Healthcare providers have really high rates of substance use. People develop pretty bad depression, kind of hitting them all at once. So health maintenance should include therapy. I think it is important to give people your best hope and interest in them getting better, because people really can. Should probably go get it before it gets all condensation all over.
I got the munchies.
We believe super strongly in serving as a role model for other providers in the community, that there's some different ways of approaching things. It doesn't have to be like this like black and white way of doing things that's too restrictive for people. It's not that we're better, that they're better. We're team members, and the more diversity there is with healthcare providers, the better taken care of people are going to be. I actually have a lot of optimism. I think that the younger generations have a lot more empathy for one another than past generations. They seem to be a lot more receptive to listening to one another and working together. Lakota people feel that this was foretold to us, that there would be this generation that would be more united. And I do think that we're seeing things move in that direction.
I gotta make it to a powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. Got my T-bird in the glove box, I ain't got no spare. Got a feather from an eagle, I ain't got no care. The road is empty in my bottle of desire. Daylight is breaking, the sun touches fire. I got to make another powwow tonight. I'll be singing 49 down by the riverside, looking for sugar, riding in my Indian car. We don't get old, we just get younger when we're flying down the highway